For over 70 years, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Marin has worked to inspire joy and justice in an imperfect world, sharing life's journey, celebrating many paths, and acting to make a difference. UU Marin celebrates people from all walks of life. No matter how you make your living or how you experience the sacred, no matter who you are, where you're from, or who you love, you are welcome here. If you're seeking open-hearted community, a place where you can have a real day-to-day impact in the world, and a space for the whole family to grow spiritually, come check out the church at the top of the hill. Come join UU Marin.
We're walking in the air, we're floating in the moonlight sky. The people far below are sleeping as we fly. I'm holding very tight, I'm riding in the midnight blue. I'm finding I can fly so high above with you. On across the world, the villages go by like dreams. The rivers and the hills, the forests and the streams. Children gaze, open mouth, taken by surprise. Nobody down below believes their eyes. We're surfing in the air, we're swimming in the frozen sky. We're drifting over icy mountains floating by. We're walking in the air, we're dancing in the midnight sky, and everyone who sees us greets us as we fly.
People are extraordinary. We know this. But sometimes I stop and remember the ways in which my beloved community has shown up for me at the moments I needed them, and I'm awestruck over and over again. There was a time in my life I imagine many of you can relate to. I had lost my parents, and the world seemed upside down. My mom had been ill and had passed 5 weeks earlier. Her last days were, of course, a difficult time, but it seemed, and she told me, she was at peace. I had visited her in the hospice almost daily, just down the road on Professional Center Drive. Nathaniel, who was 5 months old at the time, was often with me. My mom told me multiple times how much joy it brought to her to see her tiny grandson. I was adjusting to life without my mom when I had a call from my Aunt Heidi that my dad had been transported from Vermont to Boston for emergency heart surgery. My husband, Michael, organized my flight and helped me pack a bag while I tried to process this news and what it might mean. About 2 hours later, I was on the Marin airporter, unsure I'd ever see my father's smile again. The only thing I could think to do was reach out to my friends. I have no siblings. That's probably important to know. I sent a short, dense, and probably shocking message to some of the people I trusted would want to know what was happening with my father and that I was on my way east. When I landed in Boston, I was waiting to collect my bags at baggage claim. Michael called to tell me the news I had been dreading, that my father had passed. I stood in tears at the baggage claim exit with the March wind whipping through the automatic doors. My aunt and grandmother were waiting for me at the hospital, but I couldn't even think what to do next. Seconds later, my friend Gretchen called to say she was nearby, having driven from Maine to pick me up and take me wherever I needed to go. She had read my text from 7 hours earlier and jumped into action. In minutes, I was hugging her and crying together in her warm car, pulled over by the side of the road. Gretchen was part of my beloved community. She took me to my family at the hospital and stayed with us overnight. I said goodbye to my father, and all the things took place that I imagine usually take place under such circumstances. It was bleak, but there were tasks to do, and I felt supported. The next day, Michael and Nathaniel flew in from California to join me and my relatives in Boston. Gretchen went home, and my family and I wended our way to Vermont in a caravan of vehicles. Shortly after we arrived at my aunt's house, my Aunt Heidi's house, her phone rang. It was my roommate from college, Erin. She had received my text the day before. She tried to reach me by phone and email to no avail. And then she just hopped on a plane from Virginia to Connecticut and rented a car and drove to Vermont 3 hours. She showed up at my father's house, hoping to find me there. With no one at home, she then found a neighbor with a cell signal, not an easy thing in Vermont, and engaged in admirable sleuthing activity to locate my Aunt Heidi's phone number via a trail of 3 different people. Erin knew that I needed the in-person support of a friend, and she was determined that we would connect. Fortunately, I was only 15 minutes away from her, and we did indeed gather. She told me, "Alex, when my own dad died, everyone around me was grieving. I thought you could use a friend around you to lean on who was not grieving as much as you." What a gift. Beloved community can exist in so many ways, as interaction between individuals, small groups, larger groups. This community here, which Michael and I joined towards the end of that very difficult year, has always been a beloved community for us in multiple ways. Always there, always willing, outreaching and loving. I wrote a letter to Erin a couple of years ago, 15 years after she showed up for me that day. I acknowledged her for the difference she made to me then, and how the impact of her actions have stayed with me ever since. Can there be anything more beautiful in this world than the ways in which we make a difference in each other's lives? Thank you.
I am open and I am willing, but to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up the light of change. There is hurting in my family, and there is sorrow in my town. There is panic across the nation. There is wailing the whole world around. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though they burn our eyes. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty yoke to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Yeah. You're welcome. We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the joys that we live together. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I'm alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced on the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection be my crime. In humility I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live side by side. Loving spirits will live forever. We are swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who come before me band together and be my guide, loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. One more time. We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the things that we live by side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming on the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
Yeah. So swim along with me, just for a little while, for I am weary. I could use a friend in these deep waters. Cold is the stone without the sun. Bitter are the tears wept alone. Swim with me. I'm sinking and don't want to drown. I've forgotten how to breathe, and my lungs, they ache with pain. You say that you are drowning too? I'm not surprised. The cold winds blow around us all. The ocean's great waves knock a body down sometimes, sucking our souls into whirlpools of despair. Swim with me. Perhaps our hearts will beat together to find a rhythm pulsing slow, a gentle current of grace and hope that will surely lead us to the shore. I wrote that poem more than a few years ago. And I put it in the little notebook I used when I was doing my clinical pastoral education at Marin General Hospital as a chaplain, part of my ministry training. We are all just swimming to the other side, and most of us carry pain and grief throughout our life's journey. I loved Allie's talk this morning as she shared how important it was that her friends came through and helped her when she was overwhelmed by a tidal wave of grief. When I've done memorial services, and I actually have officiated at more than a few, I usually talk about grief and how it is many things and contains more emotions than really can be named. I also often spoke of grief with an ocean metaphor. I really like metaphors, folks. Because the shock of loss can be like falling into a cold sea, with the energy of the waves beating against a rocky shoreline. That can symbolize the anger we might feel when we are grieving. anger at the fact of grief, and maybe even at the one who has left us. We paddle in the shallows of denial. The sand scrapes against our wounded hearts, opening us to feelings of guilt or regret. And the tide goes in and out with a force that cannot be resisted. And anything, friends, you feel while in the midst of immediate grief is really okay. There's no way to control that tide of emotion. All you can do is feel what you're feeling. It's important to let ourselves grieve when we experience a loss, and we all lose things along the path of life. Whether it's another person, our health, a job, a home, a dream, and even just an unsettling change in our life that we really expect will eventually bring good things. Loss and change are a part of everything. One example of a positive change that can also involve loss and grief is when a young person graduates from high school and ventures out into the world as a young adult. They usually feel quite a bit of excitement, but there is also very likely fear and grief at what they will be leaving behind, because almost all change involves grief. And this includes the changes that come to congregants when a new minister arrives. And it is, even in that instance, especially in that instance perhaps, to let yourself grieve, to acknowledge the loss, whatever it is that you have suffered. Let the tears flow when they will. Let your feelings move through you. But most of all, be gentle with yourself and with others. Sometimes it's necessary to just sit with your feelings. Like the ocean waves, grief can wash over us at unexpected times with an intensity that can be surprising. Over time, however, usually over time, the waves of grief tend to grow just a little bit farther apart, and we learn to stand a little bit steadier while they wash over us. There's no cure for grief. There is only, at best, a partial healing. Loss is often permanent. Certainly is when a loved one dies, but sometimes we lose other things, hopes, dreams that we know now are gone forever. We'll never get our youth back. Some relationships will never be repaired. And good health is always temporary. The past is just a goodbye. I think there's an old Crosby, Stills, and Nash song that has that line. Always loved that song, too. Grief never completely goes away, but maybe, just maybe, we can learn to swim and to navigate those changing currents of our lives. And learning to swim is important, because if you don't, a couple of not so wonderful things can happen to you and to those around you. One, you can drown. Not everybody survives. Grief can weigh you down over time with just heavy stones of despair. You sink beneath the waves. And even as your heart continues to beat, you've forgotten how to really breathe. And maybe you've forgotten how to love, because love has suddenly become too painful. And that's not good. That's not good, because it is love. It is love that always saves us in the end, and it's the only thing that does. The other thing that can happen is getting stuck in a place of anger or resentment. I mean, initial anger is totally normal. Don't get me wrong on that. But if you dwell on it for too long and go, why me? It's not fair, blah, 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 and you get really just kind of peed off, pissed off, yeah, whatever, I can say that. And those things are both true. Much of life is simply luck, good and bad, and it isn't necessarily fair or just. It's okay to rail against the injustice of it all. But too much anger and resentment about unfairness of it all can be dangerous to you if it goes on too long. You can forget that there are other people in the water with you, with us, also doing the best they can to swim to the other side. And like a drowning person, we may fight help and try to pull potential lifeguards down under the water with us. Because learning to swim means reaching out, floating as best you can, and maybe grabbing a hand for balance, but just holding on gently. We have to do some of our own paddling too. And if we try to pull others under, all of us, as a community, as a town, as a world, all of us might drown. No, we need to just hold on and try to float as best we can, while others try to help guide us to the shore. There's a reason why mutual support groups, like grief groups, are so helpful. Because helping others is, in fact, what really helps us. And the final step in, I think, all 12-step programs makes this pretty explicit by saying, having a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. 12-step programs are wonderful. But the line from our opening hymn this morning, kindness will heal us. As we give, we gain. It's got the same idea. You help yourself by helping others. If we're thrown into deep water, we might learn to swim all by ourselves, but we also might drown. We need loving companions, fellow swimmers to teach us how to swim, how to survive. We need to get along, to have a community of trust and care, a community of helping each other learn to swim. Now here at this Unitarian Universalist congregation of Marin, we have a mission statement, which we recite most Sundays. But we also have a covenant of right relations, which is a guide of sorts on how we intend to share the journeys of our lives. It reads, respect others, their person, ideas, and spiritual, theological beliefs. Speak the truth with love, care, and sensitivity. Listen carefully. Respond with respect. And the most important one of all, act with kindness. That's the covenant we have as a congregation, one that should be guiding us on how we will be together. These are promises we have made to each other, and they are the ones that we have said we will try to live up to. And I hate to say this, particularly because there's a couple new people here, but frankly, we haven't been doing all that well with this, folks. I'm sorry. I'm speaking the truth with love, care, and I hope at least a little bit of sensitivity. Respect, love, care, sensitivity, and kindness. Those are the things that will help us become the beloved community we aspire to be, that we need, that the world needs. Now, I don't believe in either angels or demons. We all make mistakes. especially when we are in grief, especially when we are angry or afraid. But disparaging somebody else's theology or spiritual practice really isn't okay in one of our congregations. As individuals, we're free to believe whatever makes sense to us about God and what happens after we die. But our congregations have members from a wide variety of faiths and traditions, including atheists and Christians, Jews, Muslims, pagans, Hindus, Buddhists, the whole spectrum of theological belief. And sometimes in church we're going to mention Jesus. Other times we might mention the Quran. And I do understand this too, because I was, when I first came to this church, I was kind of traumatized by my Christian upbringing. So it might freak you out. It freaked me out when I first heard somebody quote the Bible from this pulpit. But, take a breath. You're not back in your traumatic childhood, okay? You're with other people that are open. We don't all expect you to believe the same stuff. We just don't. And, our mission statement says we celebrate many paths. We got to do that, guys. Just got to do that. And those paths may not be yours, and that's fine. But, even if we're speaking different theological language, if we listen with our hearts, we can empathize and feel for each other. Okay? It also really, really isn't okay to be rude or unkind, to not listen to other people, to be disrespectful, insensitive, or careless. That is out of covenant. It's breaking the promises we have made to each other. And our covenant, in case you have forgotten it already, respect others, their person, ideas, and spiritual theological beliefs. Speak the truth with love, care, and sensitivity. Listen carefully. Respond with respect. Act with kindness. Now, I got a question for y'all. How many of you have never heard the words from that covenant before? Yeah, okay, there's certainly some, and I'm not surprised. We voted on them quite a number of years ago. I'm not sure exactly when. I was either right after Marcus came or shortly before. But then they kind of gathered dust, and they were relegated to a pretty obscure part of our website. So, if you've forgotten them or haven't been paying attention, you definitely have an excuse. And excuses are good, but they're not reasons to not change. Okay. So it's past time, I believe, to bring that covenant back into our awareness and into our congregational culture as a whole, into our daily practice of how we are together. And let me say firmly and clearly that I'm not bringing this up only because, what did I say here? Anne read this. I'm not bringing this up because a few people have been rude or even mean at times to our minister and his family. Don't get me wrong, I really, really hate that, being a minister myself and having a spouse I want people to be nice to. But the real problem goes much deeper. It's how we are with each other. It's how we tolerate problematic behavior and make excuses for it. We aren't always kind and respectful toward each other. We send nasty emails. We, can fall into gossiping and complaining rather than addressing conflicts directly. And sometimes we just want things our own way. and we aren't willing to listen to the perspectives of others. We're not willing to compromise. Now, I have been in a congregation that really lived into their right relations covenant. They weren't perfect, being human, but any time someone behaved out of covenant, another member would call them back in. If they heard somebody gossiping or complaining about somebody else, they would ask them if they address those complaints directly to the person they're talking about. Because the norm was to talk to people, not about them. And the expectation was, and this part I think is really important, the expectation was that everyone was capable of learning to be more kinder and more responsible ways of interacting. Because frankly, to just ignore it when somebody breaks our covenant by acting rudely or disrespectfully is not fair to the person who's acting inappropriately. And I really believe that. To say, oh, that's just Theresa. She's always like that. A real disagreeable grump. You say that, you mean you don't think I'm capable of change. Okay? 2, now, in the morning before I have coffee, it's always a challenge. But, I really am capable. Lad's looking at me really funny. I really am capable to learn how to just grunt as opposed to, don't talk to me. And when someone speaks to me too early, I really can learn to say quietly, can we please talk after I've had my coffee? We're human, we screw up, but we can learn. And conflicts and disagreements are inevitable. We're human, we have diverse wants and needs, experiences, and healthy conflict. The exchange of ideas and sharing of experience and thoughts, it can really generate creative responses to situations and transform communities in extremely positive ways. So yeah, it is perfectly fine to disagree with anybody. With me, with the board, with the minister, with other members on your committee or not on your committee, or, somebody that gets in your way in the parking lot. I don't know. That's all fine. But we're not angels or demons. And those who disagree with us are not demons either. I'm not so sure about some political figures on that. But I do know that that is true for all of us here. We're kind of perfectly imperfect. But when our demon side escapes, and it does, just does, there are almost always ways to repair the damage that we've done as a result, to make amends. Most often, a simple, heartfelt apology and a renewed commitment to try and do better is enough. So reach out for help when you need it, and give others a hand when they need help. Our pastoral care team and our minister are here to help you with your grief and with your pain. And we have a healthy congregations team in this congregation, and we just got a bunch of new members, of which I'm one. And we're in training mode right now, so disclaimer there, we're learning this stuff. But our team mission is to help us all become more faithful to our covenant and to facilitate conflict in ways that enhance community and relationships rather than degenerating into, okay? Now you understand the point of the children's story. And so, just so you're aware, conflicts with the minister and a congregant are handled through the Committee on Shared Ministry, not the Healthy Congregations team. But I think the work of the Healthy Congregation team is going to maybe be the most important, because what I'm concerned about when I look at this congregation and our history and our future and what we want, the concern is not so much how we treat the minister, although we do need to treat him better, but about our overall culture and how we think it's okay to go off on people, just kind of randomly almost. So when we learn to be kinder and gentler with each other, and to accept that we can disagree with others and stay in relationship, then we can learn to interact with the minister too in similar and supportive ways. Trust will grow, and we can have a long-term transformative relationship with our very talented and caring minister, a relationship that most of us have been craving. And there's no shame in asking for help. As some of you know, I joined this congregation back in the mid-90s, way before I went into the ministry. And I've had more than a few conflicts with folks here. More than a few. And sometimes I needed help with it. I needed a facilitator. Sometimes the minister who was here at that point helped facilitate a conversation. More recently, and I've had conflicts in the last year. I mean, it happens. I'm human. Sometimes I'm a little too blunt for folks. And I can hurt people's feelings when I don't intend to. But I think I've learned more, and I've done it a few times in the last year, is to approach someone directly. If I think maybe I've stepped on their toes, or they've stepped on mine, that one of us has behaved in a hurtful fashion. Because, most often hurt is unintentional. And even if it is intentional, it's often coming from a place of grief and pain. So reach out for help with your grief and pain. That's the core. And we all need help sometimes. And I do believe we are well on our way to becoming a true beloved community, and that we are not going to return to old habits that split the congregation and drove some of our former ministers away. Living our covenant, calling people back into covenant when they stray, that's the critical part, is what will help create a community that reflects our values in everything we do and say. And as one of the verses in the song, Swimming to the Other Side, when we get there, we'll discover all the gifts we have been given to share, have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. May we keep swimming together, UU Marin. I love you. May we all remember to breathe. Don't let the water get in your lungs. May it be so. Amen.